It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantatrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine indeed. Welcome to the show. Back once again to bring you the weekly recap on everything that's been happening in the world of Star Wars this week. And hopefully tonight, for the first time, we're also streaming live to Twitch. So if you're watching on Twitch, say hello in the chat. We'll know it's working. Coming up on the show, first up, we're going to be talking Mark Hamill. He's been commenting on the future as Luke Skywalker. ILMxLAB rebranded this week to ILM Immersive. We'll be chatting about that. As well as that, Industrial Light and Magic themselves had a bit of a new brand reveal. We'll be checking out that video. Gentle Giant, Han Solo Stormtrooper disguised Milestones statue was revealed, and we'll be looking at that. Empire Magazine's gone behind the scenes with Ahsoka. We'll be looking forward to that series. And Dave Filoni has also been talking about it, saying there aren't many like her left, if any. We'll be discussing Ahsoka and the future of Jedi in Star Wars. And new Indiana Jones products have been made available to US Disney Plus subscribers. We'll be chatting all about the upcoming Indiana Jones film. And to speak about that and everything else, joining me from FatherTracks.com, Editor-in-Chief, Mr. Mark Newbold.
Evening all.
How are you, Mark?
I'm good. Good, yeah. Busy as always. Trying to keep the wheels spinning on life in general. Yeah, just about coping.
And we're in this kind of lull post-celebration in the news. We're kind of... news is quiet because all the products have been revealed. May the 4th was a big post-celebration date as well for product reveals. What do you expect over the course of this summer in the build-up to Ahsoka? We're going to be talking about that later in the summer. Star Wars-wise, in this kind of quiet period when there's nothing on the air. We're not, we talk about that now because we're so used to weekly Star Wars content.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and we said about this on Making Tracks, how quickly things get sort of left behind in the rearview mirror. I guess we've got a Disney Gallery coming up for season 3 of Mando. I think that's probably the only thing I can think of in the immediate future. But yeah, I mean, there's always events and there's always products sort of dribbling out. But yes, of course, happy birthday to Vivian. Well done, Matt. But yeah, it's a weird one. It's definitely we find now with the site, I guess, with the socials as well, and just Star Wars in general, when there's a celebration on or on its way or within a week of it finishing, and obviously when there's stuff on the television, there's more news going on, there's more people around, more people to interview and things to sort of chat about. But yeah, we do manage to keep it going just about. But yeah, it's definitely going to be weird until Ahsoka lands in, when is it, August? So it's still...
Yeah, and Jonathan Tyson there was asking in the comments, is it still coming out in August as planned? It is, and it looks like the media for that's really going to start kicking off this coming week with the release of the Empire Magazine special on it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting what they've revealed from that so far. So some good stuff in there.
Yeah, And Jack there making a comment as well. We've had so much content during the cold months, such that it makes sense for it to calm down with summer and more people out and about, which is very true.
Very true, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of events on. We're heading towards the summer months now, so like LFCC and stuff like that. There's a Farthest From coming up. The MCOM's next week. There's things happening, but not until you sort of get to October with New York Comic Con and that, I guess, and San Diego's July, isn't it? So there'll be plenty from there. Hello, Becca.
Yeah, Becca also saying Actors and Actors with David Luna Hayden Christensen's coming out this week as well. Don't miss that one. It's another exciting element that's coming up in the Star Wars world in this coming period as well.
Yeah, that should be fascinating. Those two talking to each other, and similar age, I think, as well. So probably some shared experiences. Then I think Pedro's on as well. I forget who was with the fella from Beef. I forget the chap's name, but that should be interesting as well. So there's a bit of Star Wars interest there, like Becca says.
Yeah. Let's go straight to the first story we've got for tonight, and it was Mark Hamill talking about the future as playing Luke Skywalker. He doesn't have any expectations of coming back as Luke Skywalker. Is basically when he got to making the comment that when he read the script for Episode 8, he knew it was over. He relished all that moments, got his chance to say goodbye to all those people that he worked with over the years. Asked sort of the direct question if he would return to Star Wars. No, I don't have any expectations of that happening. So pretty clear answer, which is not normally the approach we get from actors, where they get a little bit creative in the responses of being non-committal, but pretty much flat no.
Last year when Obi-Wan Kenobi came out and Liam Neeson said, "I don't do television," and then within a week of him saying that, he turned up on Derry Girls, and then he rocks up at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi, spoiler alert. But
I'm just doing that comment from Beck. I don't know if she's talking about Mark Hamill or you.
I think she's talking about Mark, but I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a misdirect there. I mean, obviously he's promoting. Thank you, Becca. He's promoting his own show at the moment, the film rather than The Machine. So he's in promo mode for that. So that should be the focus. Of course, it should be the focus. Yeah. And he's certainly been a busy fella in the last few years. Outside of Star Wars. But we talked about it on Making Tracks last week, and I just wonder whether or not Mark Mulcaster said it. He's played Luke. Luke died. He's 6 years gone. If you look at it in those terms, he came back as a Force ghost. There's a limited amount of stuff he can do as a Force ghost. A few sort of speeches you can make and things you can say, and the odd X-wing to lift up, and you've got the extra jolt of being on Acto. But beyond that, not an awful lot, I would say. I would imagine that he finds the stuff that he does in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett probably, even though he's working in concert with other people, probably more creatively fulfilling. So I'd like to think there could be something in those terms ahead for him, because I would imagine, I don't know, Mark, if you're listening, you're welcome to come on. You're looking really trim, by the way. But, if he wants to come and talk about it. But yeah, I would imagine that would be the interesting element for him, because it's fresh and new as an actor.
Yeah. I think he was being honest as well that the experience of the sequel trilogy was probably more a negative than it was a positive. I think that has an impact. I think in many ways he's retired that character. So like you say, like when he gets a chance to do something maybe different and innovative, like the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, that interests him. And I think he still enjoys the interactions with the fans. He's still active on social media, still doing events. He missed Celebration. As Jack's saying, he's still signing some Topps cards as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a difficult one. I think I think he's reached a point where he's decided to park that character and move on. He's getting a lot of different and more interesting roles, perhaps, to him.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit like Shatner. I mean, when was the last time Shatner played Captain Kirk? 1994. He wrote a couple of books, and I don't know, I can't remember if he did any sort of the audio books. I know he did some of those back in the day. But point being, he's not been on screen as Kirk since then. But he still does Trek conventions. He's still completely that guy. Does Mark need to physically be Luke Skywalker anymore? Up until 2012, he probably thought he'd never play him again. He probably thought that advert he did for Vector Prime was the last thing he'd ever do. So, it's everything's been gravy in that sense, and he's back in the public eye very much so. So, yeah, it's. I would imagine they'd have to offer him something pretty interesting for him to consider it.
Yeah, and Mr. Booker pointing out as well is in the new film The Machine as well. So
Yeah,
he's got a lot going on, and I think that probably appeals more to him than, you know,
yeah,
if you get involved in like another trilogy of Star Wars, it's 10 years of your life. It's a big commitment, and he's probably looking at let's just call it Star Wars 10 because we don't know what it's going to be, but the Rey film, the Rey focus film.
yeah.
He's probably thinking, I don't really want to be a part of that because the focus should now be on Rey. It's like Luke Skywalker's story's done. You know, it's he doesn't need to dominate Rey's storyline.
That's it. And like say, Yoda turns up, but it's Yoda. Yoda's got that extra boost of being Yoda and 900 years old and all that sort of stuff. And then we're on Acto. This is 15 years after Rise of Skywalker, and you see Luke on Tatooine at the end. But does that mean Luke has still got the capacity and the capabilities, and Leia, because you see Leia as well? Have they still got the capacity to appear to Rey that far on? Who knows? We'll find out when the film comes out, I guess.
Yeah. Nothing stays the same forever, which leads us on sweetly to the next story. ILMxLAB has rebranded itself as ILM Immersive, and part of an overall branding initiative at Industrial Light and Magic, which we'll check out in a second. But ILMxLAB they kind of alluded as well in their commentary that it was kind of an experimental thing when they set it up. And it's probably been more successful than they perhaps realised. It's done a lot of stuff for Star Wars and Marvel, and it's made a bit of an impact in the gaming world and earned itself a solid, good reputation there. And I think this is probably them taking it. I'm guessing taking the word lab out of it because it kind of makes it sound like it's beta and not end product.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Giving it kind of like a name that's maybe more reflective of what its aims are, and that's to create this virtual reality immersive kind of experiences.
Yeah, it's a nice rebrand. It's a nice. I always liked XLab as a name, but you're totally right. Lab kind of does make it sound like it's a beta test rather than a finished thing. So maybe that was part of their thinking. And as you say, I think they revealed it the same day. I think we only posted it a couple of days ago, but they've rebranded, done new logos for all parts of the company, and didn't realise quite how many parts of ILM there are, quite apart from the fact there's ones in different parts of the world as well. It's a smart move, and they're all nice looking logos with XLab, formerly XLab Immersive now. The little X-wing there. There's little touches on all of the logos that look really, really quite smart. But as you say, forging on into the future with these new endeavours, it's a good time to rebrand. We're between films, we're between seasons of shows, and it's not a bad time to do it and get that new branding out there.
Yeah. Just jumping back to Luke's story for a moment, 'cause a couple of interesting comments there in the chat. One here from Elliot. Isn't a Rey film without Luke presence a bit elephant in the room? I'd actually go the other way. I actually think that the presence you kind of want in a Rey film is Kylo Ren.
That's a very good point. And so many people, just loved Ben in that jumper, and I personally think he had the perfect ending as a Jedi. He got the send off that every Jedi could dream of. So I think as a character and an ending for a character, it was perfect. And of course that was wrapping up the Skywalker saga. And here we are, what are we now, 4 years later, probably 6 years by the time the film comes out, when there's the option for maybe some version of Kylo, or Ben, we should say, I guess, to return. Would Adam Driver want to do it? Who knows? Depends on how many zeros in the end of his paycheck, I guess.
Yeah. Jonathan Tyson as well making a comment about he'd like to see Luke Skywalker get his own series. I think stories that can get covered, but he respects that Mark Hamill doesn't want to do it. And I kind of agree. I don't think it necessarily means the end of Luke Skywalker as a character. I think we kind of probably have to get comfortable with the fact that if you want original trilogy characters to continue in live action that were and set in the correct sort of time period and age group, we're going to have to get used to the fact that they're going to have to be recast. Yeah. And probably not something that we've really had to cope with too much in Star Wars, because when there has been recastings, it's been largely due to massive differences in age presentations of the characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hamill's quite open to Luke being recast as a character, and would like to see Luke carry on. That's fine. Same with Harrison and Alden Ehrenreich for Solo, who did such a great job. You rarely hear a bad word about Solo. Most people seem to enjoy it. So, you know, you know, widely mixed opinions on that one. But I think, yeah, I think I wouldn't be averse to seeing another actor play Luke at that age. Because unless you treat the face replacement, whatever you want to call it, deep fake. I know it's not the phrase ILM like to use, but that kind of technology, unless you treat that as basically makeup, I'm going to sit in a makeup chair for 4 hours to look like Mark Hamill, or I'm going to spend 20 minutes whilst they put black dots on my face, so later on they can make me look like Mark Hamill. If you treat it like a makeup as opposed to erasing the actor, then there's potential. Let's see when Dial of Destiny comes out, see how well I've done it with Harrison.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And on the ILM front as well, they've also done a whole rebrand of the entire Industrial Light and Magic logo, which is something they gave a sort of visual presentation to in some respects, and showed how they've done it, and over the years how it's evolved since the sort of original conception of the company back in 1975, before the original Star Wars movie, and showcased quite a bit of some of the amazing work they've done on franchises beyond Star Wars.
Yes, it's a lovely trailer. It's a really lovely trailer. And when they explain where the different elements of the new logo came from, the cog from the original, the magician logo, and just the different little elements, really, again, like ILM and Lucasfilm tend to do, excuse me, respecting and honouring their own past. Here we go. So it's just nicely done, and it's great. Again, even in this little sting here, just to see those older logos, and I didn't realise that logo had been around for nearly 20 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, I still like the original logo.
Same. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, it was nice the way that they showed it, stealing the elements over the years, evolving it over the years.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder, they've made quite a big thing out of this. It kind of makes me wonder why. And I wonder if there's going to be a bigger move to showcase ILM separately, maybe from Lucasfilm moving forward as its own kind of entity.
Yeah.
Because it quite often gets sort of hidden away in the shadows a little bit, and maybe doesn't get the recognition for the work that they do and the innovation that they do that perhaps deserves.
That's true. I mean, innovation was always so key to what Lucas was doing, especially after the original trilogy, excuse me, when the ranch was being built, and then sort of certainly into the 90s with the advent of, the digital era. The innovation was always at the forefront. Of course, THX was part of it at one point, and and they've rebranded before. Sprocket Systems became Skywalker Sound, Graphics Group became Pixar. Things have changed over the years for sure. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it does make you wonder, given that they do stuff in the Marvel universe now. They've done stuff for DC with Batman. They've done so many franchises outside of Star Wars. The things I love that top. The things that they've done. It's probably quite a smart thing to do, because it's part of Lucasfilm, of course, but it's now much broader. It's part of Disney as well, so it's probably branding wise quite a smart move.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, and something that always kind of important to me with Star Wars is when Star Wars is at its best, it's because it's also innovating technology and moving, the whole industry really forward from the original Star Wars doing that, even to, if you go back to season 1 of The Mandalorian, which they did with the stagecraft as well.
Yeah.
When I think it's Star Wars at its best is when it's innovating at its best.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, it still gets me that they didn't win the Oscar for Phantom Menace. When you think the amount of innovation on Phantom, you could argue that was the most innovative they ever were. The amount of new things on that, and then Bullet Time wins. And I'm not looking at Matrix, because I love the Matrix, but there's no way that should have won the Oscar that year. It was Phantom Menace all the way.
Yeah. Let's move on to some new products. And we've got from Gentle Giant, Han Solo Stormtrooper disguise Milestones statue. Coming out in 6 scale, limited to 1,000 pieces, costing $250. Gentle Giant obviously doing tremendous stuff again, and this Han Solo one looks like another lovely product.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we do post a lot of Gentle Giant stuff because they put so much stuff out, and it is always really nice. And that's a good size. That's a good size model as well. 12 inches is a foot tall. It's a good size one as well. Yeah, very, very nice. Oh, hello, Rudvig. Hello. It's good to see these. I do like Gentle Giant. They, with the bust that they do all various different iterations and styles and scales and such. And yeah, this is definitely a winner.
Yeah, definitely. And moving on in the news front, something we've got looking forward to this August is Ahsoka coming to Disney Plus, and we're about to get the big marketing push, which I think the series needs, because it's going to be a character that, let's be honest, that the mainstream casual viewers probably not going to be overly familiar with. Obviously, she kind of made her debut in Mandalorian, and she appeared in the Book of Boba Fett as well, so people have got a taste. But really, I imagine that a lot of her backstory is going to be unknown to the mainstream, and so there's a lot of work probably needed to support and back up the character as she gets her own series.
Yeah, exactly that. I think Filoni even touches on that in his little sort of chat about the character. But excuse me, I think it's a bit like Andor, where if you're familiar with Rogue One, you understand the motivations and the background of the character, then it makes all the sense in the world. But if you're a more general Star Wars fan, you're kind of being introduced to Cassian and the scenario that he's in. And I think with Ahsoka, if you've not watched animation, and who wouldn't watch animation, Brian? But if you've not watched animation, then you won't have the best best knowledge base of what she's about. But I'm 100% certain that they'll make sure that's remedied by the time the viewers get into it and start watching it. That you'll know enough about Ahsoka. I mean, it's kind of like a ground zero if you think back to the Mandalorian and that first appearance in season 2. You've got this wonderful backstory. It's going to be the same with the Rebels crew. They're going to introduce those characters, I would imagine, as if they're pretty much new characters. And you'll learn, if you want to go back to Rebels and watch 4 seasons, because hey, it's all out on there on Disney Plus, or at least it is at the moment. So
they could
so,
be gone any day.
Yeah. So I think they'll probably do some stuff on StarWars.com and a little bit of history of Ahsoka. I know I wrote a piece for the celebration brochure about Ahsoka's history. So there's definitely a job to do to make the broader general public be aware of what she's all about.
Yeah, and a lot of the content interviews from this actually dates back to Celebration Empire, interviewing some of the cast that were at Celebration, like a story that kind of came out at Celebration time and probably didn't get the coverage it probably deserved at the time, which I kind of loved, was the Lothcat that we see in the Ahsoka trailer. Wasn't CG, but was actually a practical puppet made by Legacy Effects, who we all know make Grogu. And we could probably run the trailer whilst we speak about it, because it makes sense. Your thoughts on that? Because that kind of surprised me a little bit about the Lothcat, because you just assume nowadays that these things are CG.
You do. It's funny. I think here we go, name drop. When I interviewed Neil Scanlon, one of the big questions I wanted to ask him was about the marriage between CG and animatronics, because obviously the technology of both is constantly evolving. But yeah, you look at that and you just assume that that's a CG Lothcat, and the fact they've done it as a real thing is fantastic. It's the more of that, the better. I personally think it grounds you, and not only grounds you as a viewer, because goodness knows the CG has got better and better and better, so it's hard to tell. But it would also help the actors, and anything that helps the actors feel more authentic in their roles and their performances is a good thing. But yeah, I think the tech side of it from both sides, CG and from animatronic, it's kind of going back to '93 with Jurassic, when you're skipping from the CG T-Rex to the practical sort of 10-ton thing swinging around on a jib, knocking people, left, right, and centre. It's trying to find the balance between the two and which is the best. Not always, you've got to account for costings and pricings and so on and so forth. Sometimes it's cheaper to build, a Thalas sea siren in full scale than doing it as a CG thing. Why wouldn't you build it if you can build it, sort of thing? So there's options in that sense. But yeah, I think it's great that it's a real thing, and it's toyetic. You know that thing's coming out.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to probably address as well. Anytime you see a trailer about Ray Stevenson as well, obviously who's passed away, and he's a big part of the teaser trailer, and looks like he was going to play a big part in the coming series as well. So tragic news ahead of its release.
Yeah, I mean, he was only 58, and he was at Celebration. He's interviewed in Empire. Not that it's anybody's business. They've not said what the reasoning or what the reason was, rather, for his passing. But horribly sad. We put a piece on Phantom and didn't go into too much sort of waffling as I tend to do, because we've not really seen his character. Balin Skull, I think his name is the character. We've not really seen. We don't really know if he's friend or foe. We assume he's foe from the trailer, but we don't really know how that all comes about. So you can't really talk too much about that. Of course, he was. I think he was Volstagg in the Thor movies. We saw him in Rome. He's been in plenty of stuff over the years. Punisher, of course, Punisher Warzone. So. Just horribly sad, and the fact that he'll never get to enjoy and see, the reaction to the series. It's irrelevant really, but I find that really sad, because clearly he was thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, there's certainly from Celebration, he was just seemed so excited to be a part of this, so thrilled at the role as well, which we've still got to enjoy ahead. In terms of the rest of the cast, bit of controversy, I think, that about Thrawn and Lars Mikkelsen taking on the role. It seems to be a quiet rumbling of dissatisfaction, would I say. Seems harsh, but people aren't blown away with that casting decision.
It's a common conversation about people who wanted Ashley to play Ahsoka, and Rosario's got the role now, but Ashley was hired for a voice, and then other actors like what's her name, Katie Sackhoff, who's come from television in a defined role like Starbuck, and then she comes in and voices the character, so they make the character look a bit like her, and then it comes to live action and there she is doing it. I think there may have been I don't know, Dave, if you're watching, you're welcome to come on. Different episode to Mark, please. But you just wonder whether or not, that he was cast not only for his voice, and of course, his brother had been in Rogue One, and, you just wonder whether or not they just were thinking ahead, maybe at some juncture, he kind of has the right look. So I think there could be an element of that, because, when you're hiring and auditioning and bringing in people purely for their voice, that's one thing. That's a skill in and of itself. But I think maybe now you've got the options to do live action as well as animation. Pedro Pascal basically just voices the Mandalorian now. So why not have Pedro Pascal voice the Mandalorian in a cartoon? It's something we talk about on Making Tracks this week. So, it's a different landscape now. I think things have changed.
Yeah. In terms of the rest of the cast, you're familiar with the animated side of things. I'm less invested. So I'm very comfortable with whoever takes on the role, because for me it's probably fair to say that I know the stories or the central stories and the main characters, the main plot points along their journeys. I'm not invested in the particular actor or voice or any part of that, so I look at it as their acting credentials and what they can bring to the role rather than what's come before. The rest of the cast, because obviously we're now starting to see it be announced and developed quite a bit, as who we can expect to see in the series. I'm sure there'll be surprises as well. But are you happy with the rest of the casting choices? And we've lost Mark, I think. He's frozen. Oh dear. We'll never know his opinion. He'll maybe come back online. I'm gonna knock him out, and he can rejoin in just a minute. So I'll give you my take on the cast as Mark's technical problems kick in. He's with um, uh, Virgin Media, just to give them a trashing, because I know he's been frustrated by them. So we'll give Virgin Media a kick in, because I'm sure he's going to blame them in just a second. Virgin Media, isn't it?
Virgin Media, I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. To your question, unless you already answered it, I'm fine with it. I think you know, like I say, you know, you get hired for a cartoon, you get hired for your voice, you're not hired for your looks. And I think now that, you know, it's a different world. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's going to smash it as hero, I'm certain of it. And the rest of the cast that you've seen, Steve Bloom voiced Zeb in Mando season 3. It's still a voice role. So yeah, you should leave it, Jack. Totally leave them. They're not worth
Future
it.
sponsor of the site will be BT. Unless my connection breaks down in the next 30 minutes, and then we're talking about snooker.
Oh, but yeah, I think it's going to be great. I'm so looking forward to it. I think you know, this is the show I would imagine Filoni's dreamed about doing all along, and now he's got to the point where he's spearheading it and making it happen. It must be so fulfilling for him. So I'm all in for that.
Part of me thinks it's going to be his equivalent of George Lucas's prequels.
Yeah.
Where the scrutiny of it is going to be so great and the criticism so high and probably unjustified, and it, you know, expectations are too much. That, you know, the criticisms out there, people don't know precisely what they do want, but what they're getting is not quite what they do want. And so I think the people that are fans probably need to really support this series, because I think it's going to get a bit of a kick in.
Yeah, we know this. Fantha's generally a positive outlook kind of organisation, if you want to call us an organisation. You know, we tend to try and look at the you know, the brighter side, the glass half full type thing. But there's definitely, from a, you know, putting my fake mercenary hat on, there's definitely more money in being a negative Nancy and just having a real bash at everything, because people, you know, how many news items on your daily news are good news? Not many. It's generally bad news. So people tend to, you know, feed on that, sadly. I'm hoping, like you say, I'm hoping that people go into Ahsoka very much wanting to enjoy it, and you know, and take away what they want to take away, like we do with every show. But yeah, I'm hoping it's a positive aspect.
Mr. Naylor there, tuning in from Houston.
Wow. Hello, Paul.
On his honeymoon of all things.
Yeah, good man.
And Jonathan texting there saying, you guys do well giving us the news, so thank you for that comment. Always appreciate it.
Yes, very much.
And Mr. Booker confirming the truth behind Father Tracks is a disorganisation.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Can't argue with that. In terms of Ahsoka, Dave Filoni has been speaking about it as well this past week, talking about Ahsoka the character as well, and basically saying that there's not many characters like her left in the galaxy. We're in this kind of time period where Order 66 has been executed under the democratic rights of the Supreme Chancellor. And my favourite, I love the Emperor. And you know, she's a bit of a loner. She's out there, she's got a small circle of friends. It's a tight-knit kind of little group. But she's kind of got to get back out there in the world a little bit. And that's kind of going to be what the story's going to be, I think. It's her heading back out into the galaxy a little bit and letting herself be seen a little bit, where she's kind of been hidden away to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we saw her in The Mandalorian. We've seen her in Book of Boba Fett interacting with Luke, you know. You do get the sense that, I mean, definitely after she left the Jedi Order at the end of sort of season 5 of the Clone Wars, that she was a loner, and we did see stuff in season 6 and 7, especially 7, you know, which was fantastic. And, you know, just moving forward and then into Rebels, obviously between the trilogies, and now we're way beyond the end of Jedi now, in that sort of Mandoverse, or whatever we want to call it, the Avengers. That's what I'm calling the film anyway. So you know, so she's, you know, she just tends to be a loner. I guess it's kind of in her DNA because it's a protective thing as well. So Luke's around and trying to build an academy, and we've seen this in Book of Boba. So what I think what Filoni's saying is, and I think it will play actually quite well into getting the character across to a new generation of people, is that because she's kind of alone, because she keeps her own counsel, who else is she going to talk to, really? Who's senior to her anyway? She's the Gandalf of this time period, really. So she's making her own measure to, yardsticks to be measured by, if you want to call it that. That she's easier to introduce to a new audience. There's not a lot of baggage. If you don't need the baggage. You don't need to know what she was doing back in season 2 of the Clone Wars. We saw it. Some of us saw it, Brian. But that's probably not mega relevant to what we're going to see in the season. So I think it could play into their hands in a good way.
I think the bit that's going to confuse people more than anything is the fact that when people realise that she was Anakin's apprentice.
Yes.
I think that's the confusing part of the story, and the part of the story that probably needs addressed. And I think it's confirmed that Hayden Christensen's in the series, isn't it?
I believe so.
I think so.
Was discussed, but
I don't know if it's ever been officially confirmed. I think it's just officially accepted.
Yeah.
So it will have to be addressed and explained in that, because really, it's not touched in the films, obviously. And well, it is touched in the Clone Wars films, but anyone that went to see that was a bit of a disaster. And so yeah, that's probably the one element of our story for me, being someone that's not invested in this character and doesn't know that character particularly well. That is the weird thing. Snips, she's never going to catch on. It's like I said, back in the day.
Yes. They were saying that 15 years ago.
Yeah, never going to catch on.
Right, there was a monster selling point, to have Hayden, especially coming off Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, that was one of the treats of that show, was Hayden being back, fully back on the scene and part of the cast, and and the work he did in that was brilliant. And if you can parlay that into Ahsoka, and it's another hook to bring people in, hey, they got Darth. He's not, but Darth Vader's in this, essentially. I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine that there'll be flashbacks. But who knows what other aspects of Rebels and Clone Wars is going to play into it. We're going to see the world between worlds. There's options for things to happen there. Depends on how sort of freaky they want to get.
I can see Hugh McGregor popping up.
Yeah, totally. If you're going to have Anakin in there and it's a flashback, why not bring Natalie Portman into it, for goodness sake? You've really got some options then, if they can. Again, Dial of Destiny kind of comes into it. If they can de-age well and make it look convincing, and the tech's constantly evolving. And they seem to have landed on something that works. And goodness knows I've got enough footage of those three guys from back in the day, so it's very doable.
I think Jack also making a point. I think we have to build up to Thrawn as well.
Yeah.
I think you can kind of get away with not knowing Thrawn's backstory and just introducing him as a new Imperial. I think we've had enough instances of new Imperial bad guys being introduced that is probably less confusing to a viewer.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, sometimes people get so hung up on exposition and backstory, and sometimes, certainly a fan base like Star Wars, we know what Thrawn's about. If we want to know more, we kind of know where to look. If you're a new person coming into it, you can allude to all that stuff. You don't have to literally have Basil exposition stand there and explain it all. You can allude to these things that he did. Drop a line here, drop a line there. And it's there to be seen and watched and found on Disney Plus and other places. Head to Wikipedia, for goodness sake, it's all out there. So, I think they can do exactly what you said. I think they can basically introduce him as like the new big threat. Moff Gideon's probably out of it, even though he's probably not. That was probably just a clone, but hey ho. He can come back down the line if they want to bring him back in. I hope they do. But now Thrawn's big. Hey,
it's all about the tash.
Exactly. So I think there's plenty of options to make this work as well as they want it to.
Yeah. Jack making a comment there. No show of Kanan is certain. I think that character's done and gone. You might get a token mention somewhere, but I don't think we see him.
I don't think Freddie wants to come back anyway. The way he's been talking lately, I think he's kind of over it all.
Yep, I think so. Paul Naylor saying that Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan would be amazing. Love all the that word. He loves that word, basically. They have all the connections between the shows as options. I think it makes sense that he would appear there. And the shot Obi-Wan in the same studio as the shot Ahsoka. Pretty much, I'm sure he walked over and had a look to see what they were up to during lunch breaks. Someone and a character that probably doesn't need introduction to anyone, but he got one this past week to Disney Plus with his movies and TV show, Mr. Indiana Jones. And a lovely picture there of Harrison Ford looking happy.
Beaming.
From Dial of Destiny, which comes out in June, 28th of June for people in the UK, 30th of June for people across the other side of the pond. Disney Plus, just to cheer us all up here in the UK, decided that they'll make products available only to their US Disney Plus subscribers, because they're the only ones that matter, apparently. So for 8-9 days, they've got exclusive products, only exclusive to them, because nobody else in the rest of the world could possibly want them. And it's not like they own the brand and the products and the franchise and the Disney Plus and everything all together, and it would be very easy for them to offer it to the whole world. But yeah, a whole host of new products coming out for Indiana Jones, disappointingly just for America. Mr. Naylor, he could pick them up there with he's out there in America. And he's watching Young Indy just to wind us up there in the comments. We don't have Young Indy. Indiana Jones only exists as Harrison Ford and his older self.
It must be a rights and licensing thing. It's got to be. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame they can't make it work, and hopefully in time that's something that can be remedied, because there's certainly the interest in it. Yeah. But the thing is, the interest is in it now. Now's the hot ticket. Now's the time people want it. You've got less than a month until the film comes out. If it was out here, people would be all over it. So,
Jonathan there saying, US get everything. That's always been the case. And the way to resolve that is on the 28th. Let's all go online and post about what our favourite part of the film was. Yeah, that'd go down well, wouldn't it? It would go down well, because it's not like that ever happens to us, does it?
Never.
No. But no, don't do that. Don't do that. I'll do it. Don't you guys do it. You'll get in trouble. I'll do it. But yeah, disappointing we haven't got access to these products, but they are going to be widely available from the 9th. So it is just a case of a little bonus for the Disney Plus subscribers. What you should all do is unsubscribe from Disney Plus, and when it comes up with the little box Y, type in, because you didn't offer them the products, and then you can resubscribe before the subscription date's over, so you don't lose out on anything, but it just gives them a little bit of a scare.
That's a good idea.
Send a message.
That's it. I mean, it's interesting. Here in the UK, the 4 films are on now. Obviously in the States, they've got Young Indy as well. But I just wonder, once the film comes out, what the interest and appetite for further stuff's going to be. Kathleen Kennedy's mentioned, sort of alluded to, she's not said it, but she's kind of alluded to the potential for future stuff, maybe not featuring Indy. She's kind of said the same about Indy being played by Harrison as Han Solo being played by Harrison, which kind of threw poor old under the bus a little bit. But, I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't do an Indiana Jones World Series. There's plenty of other characters.
I'll give you a suggestion, and I think it'll go down well. So you've got young Indiana Jones. Why not have old Short Round?
That's a great idea. We said this on Making Tracks. Totally a Short Round series with Key, Oscar winner, back in his, he's arguably, along with Data in the Goonies, of course, arguably his most beloved role. Yeah. Oh, just on that point, actually, you mentioned Temple of Doom. If you watch Temple of Doom on Disney Plus, it's the full-on, hand in the chest, heart out, Geiger's in the lava, not for kids version. So watch it with your kids and scare the crap
teach
out
them about 1980s filmmaking.
Yep.
And young Indiana Jones, because I'm obsessed with Indiana Jones, on Disney Plus, it is the bookend versions of the TV series that are on there, so you will get to see Harrison Ford in the bookend of one of the episodes.
Yeah, Mystery of the Blues, was it? The Chicago one. Yeah.
So he will appear in that. So there's various edits of those shows. It's very complicated if you're a fan to have the various edits, because some of the various edits no longer exist on any kind of platform, or were never released other than on TV. So complicated. The fans have made a lot of efforts to try and edit them as best they can to bring them back to how they were when they were broadcast.
I love those old bookends. I thought they were ace.
Yeah, I think there's something special about Young Indy, and it actually kicked off the relationship between George Lucas and Bob Iger, because Bob Iger headed up ABC at that time. Massive supporter of Young Indy because it wasn't doing huge numbers in the ratings, cost a bit of money, but he loved what they were doing, pushing the boundaries of technology and the documentaries that went alongside it, as well. So that's, probably Star Wars wouldn't be part of the Disney group of companies today if it hadn't been for young Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean, Star Tours obviously was predates that a little bit, so there's the beginnings of the relationship there, but definitely, and also I mentioned Phantom Menace.
I don't count Star Tours because it's fronted by a droid, you know.
Yeah, true. I'm preaching to the wrong choir here, but yeah, when you get to Phantom, that 10-year run, Rick McCallum came in on Young Indy, so that digital backlot, all that sort of stuff, the cost cutting, literally traveling the globe, filming for what was it, 18 months or something, probably longer than that. I think they were on a continuous shoot for Young Indy. So that sort of dedication and depth of work and content, and you think of some of the cast members that came through that show, and Catherine Zeta-Jones for the first time we'd really seen her outside of Darling Buds, and Liz Hurley and people like that. So a lot of people got, and then some familiar old faces. I mean, Paul Freeman came back, didn't he? And was it Phantom Train of Doom, and that Dirty Dozen type episode. So there was some really cool stuff in there. Definitely needs reevaluating. So Disney, please bring it to the UK. Find a way, because there's plenty of people who'd love to watch it who don't have iTunes.
Yeah, you need Apple Plus in the UK to watch it, and you're only getting so many of the episodes, and it's like a slightly different edit than what you're getting on Disney Plus as well. So, complicated world of streaming rights.
Yes,
but that is all the news we've got for this week, Mark. A quieter week, as we kind of alluded to at the start of the show. But before we go, there's the one big news item that's kind of been dominating everything I haven't had a chance to speak to you about has been the Galactic Star Cruiser closing down. Now, you've done the park experience. I haven't. But you haven't done the hotel experience. Are you sorry to see it go?
Yes, because I was planning on doing the hotel experience and was about 6 days away from booking it when they announced that it was closing. So little bit gutted, but hey ho. I'm disappointed. Yeah, but I get it. I do understand. It was mega. It was a Marmite endeavour, in the sense that obviously some people could afford it, other people couldn't. Some people would save for it as a goal. I think it needed more than 18 months. Disney usually tweak and adjust things. It felt like it probably needed a tweak and an adjustment rather than just, cancelling it altogether. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw it again in a different form or fashion or some different format, maybe. Take away the interactive experience and make it a Star Wars themed hotel. But there's every bit as much chance that they'll just level it and start something else entirely different, or reskin it as a Guardians of the Galaxy hotel. I don't know.
I'm going to bring something back up on the screen, because this is why I raised the topic. ILM Immersive. And that kind of makes me think, are they going to move into what we have in the UK, secret cinema kind of experience of cinema going where, if people aren't familiar with, you go dressed up, a huge event prior to watching the film, so they create a whole world and a kind of scripted interaction with various characters. You can walk around, interact with the characters in the film that you're about to watch, all fully dressed up, stunts, the works, incredible experience, and it's just been bought by a US company. They're coming to America. They're going to have a permanent location in America and also do tours in America as well. And I always say that, they did Star Wars, and this was before the concept of the park came out, and I continually make the point, I think, that it was the inspiration to Disney of we should do something in the immersive world in terms of the park. I'm pretty sure they would have been thinking of doing Star Wars rides. I'm thinking that then developed into the Star Wars land off the back of the immersive experience that Secret Cinema put together. And the Star Wars one was incredible, really was incredibly good.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if they're going to pivot ILM in that kind of direction and creating immersive experiences like that.
It makes you wonder, because it feels like they're at a point now where it's hardware and software, if that makes sense. You know, that Stagecraft is kind of hardware as well as what they put on the screen. ILM can deliver all of it now. So yeah, there's probably some serious logic to that, because where there's not many places people want to be immersed in more than the Star Wars galaxy. So even though Galactic Star Cruiser, which is a hotel predominantly, didn't work out, I don't think the core concept of what they wanted people to experience has been wiped off the whiteboard. So yeah, it's what's the next iteration of that going to be? I'm curious as to what they're going to do with the physical building, because
Beck was also asking that question in the comments there, and I hope where they're going to transition it to something else, recycle. I can actually see them knocking it down just because of where it's located. You know, it's located right on the edge of the park there. And if you want to extend the park, I think extending the parks has probably got more value to them than having a hotel at that location.
Yeah.
Whether they can do something else with the building, or whether it's a little bit too difficult to do something with the building, I can actually see them knocking it down and taking the tax right off.
Yeah. That or they'll double down and they'll double the size of the thing and just make it a Star Wars themed hotel. You know, because you go into Galaxy's Edge, you can walk into Galaxy's Edge dressed as we are, and you're just mooching around. Yeah. Whereas in Galactic Star Cruiser, the kind of the point was you'd make not necessarily, but you'd generally make the effort to be a character in the Star Wars galaxy within that world. So
I'm trying to think, and I can't think of another hotel that's located so close to an actual park though. Maybe the Polynesian Resort, perhaps right at the entrance. I think it's probably the closest.
But usually they're the other side of the water, aren't they? So they're not rolling on it. So
yeah, but so I kind of think that the value of the estate's probably be worth more to them than it is the building.
Yeah, and like I say, it's not far from Toy Story Land either, is it? So there's the option to expand there. I still think they need a Radiator Springs in Orlando, so I'd be happy for that.
Yeah, Jack, he said, can't think of hotels close to the park. Alton Towers. There we go. that's called me out there.
It's a great answer.
Great answer. I've never been to Alton Towers. There you go. There's a confession. I've never been to Legoland at Windsor either.
Oh, they're both fun. Fantha Day Out. We should do it.
There's a new ride just opened at Alton Towers. I keep seeing it advertised. Can't remember where it was. The advert's not stuck in my head, but I keep seeing the advert. There's definitely a new one out there.
Oh wow! Let's do it.
Fantha AGM. That's what we'll have it. Alton Towers.
We need one. There's an excuse.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So that's your thoughts on Galactic Star Cruiser. The fact that it's gone, I don't think it makes anybody happy, but I think it offended a lot of people. The way it was priced, I think it kind of took it away from potentially being accessible to a lot of families, and I think I personally took great delight in it closing down, because I just think it had completely the wrong principles behind it. For me,
I think the timing as well. You know, the whole world's feeling the pinch at the moment, and it was very overt exuberance that probably 5 years before or 5 years down the line, people might not have paid that much attention to in that sense. But I think right now, when everyone's feeling it, and the world's been shook upside down in the last 3 years with everything that's happened. So I just think timing was against it in that sense. But to
me,
I hope everyone who works there manages to find other employment. That's a thing I'd like to say.
Yeah. And hopefully they're well within Disney as well. I guess the element for me is I always want Star Wars to be accessible to as accessible as possible to families, and you have to appreciate that. Like, even at the moment, families can't afford basically all the storyline that's getting put out by Star Wars. If you're buying every books and comics, I know how punishing that can be.
God, yeah.
And but yeah, if you can afford like a Disney Plus subscription, you're getting access to all the Star Wars films and TV, for example, and $8 a month is probably accessible to most people. And even saving up and doing a holiday to Disneyland is very expensive. And when you add on a hotel experience at whatever, a couple of grand a night, it's very, very difficult for any family to do that.
Yeah, true. I think timing was against it. I think Bob Iger coming back and looking at the bottom line hasn't helped.
Nice concept, executed artistically very nicely. From a business point of view, bad timing, bad pricing.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one. Hello, Mark. Yeah. It's a tough one. I think it's a sort of a convergence of a few different things, and and also the repeatability of it. I mean, if you've been and done it and can afford to do it again, you might want to do it a second time, but are you going to want to do it a third time? Because of the expense, and there is a limited pool of people who would find that an attractive proposition. Ironically, they announced the closing of it, and it completely sold out on its the next wave of availability. Just sold it right through to the 28th of September. So they've at least secured a sort of a successful finish to the project.
Yeah, Anakin Crespin asking the comments. I think they'll sell leftover merchandise. I think there'll be such a scramble for the merchandise. I don't think there's going to be anything left over. People kind of like, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, they kind of like Disney products that are going out of favour become very much collectible items, and so I think most people will be trying to pick up what they can.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, looks like it's going to be a busy week ahead for Lucasfilm. So Good Morning Tatooine will be back next Sunday at 9 o'clock to discuss all this coming week's news. Mark, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Great
My
talking
pleasure.
to you about everything Star Wars this week. And as always, check out phantomtracks.com daily for your Star Wars news. Phantom Tracks Radio for all your podcasts of choice. Any podcasts you want to promote this week?
Definitely big time. So last Friday it was Planet Leia with Claire and Hannah and their guest Vivian Lara Blair, who's 11 years old today. So happy birthday, Vivian. And Tuesday it's myself and Mark Mulcaster back with episode 167 of Making Tracks with Samantha Elaine from Star Wars Fan Fun Day and all the latest news. And then on Friday it's Richard and Chris Leddy back, Richard Hutchinson and Chris Leddy back with the latest episode of Collecting Tracks. So plenty happening on Fantha Radio this week.
Fantastic. And obviously keep your eyes on social media as well at Fantha Tracks across the board. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it, Twitter, and Fantha Tracks TV, which will be kicking off. Well, we have kicked off tonight our Twitch channel, and hopefully we'll be doing some gaming on that very shortly as well. So if you've been watching on Twitch, hello.
Hello, Twitch.
And on that note, we'll end the show. So good night, everybody.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on phantomtracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Fantha Tracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Fantha Tracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.